Thanks everyone for coming. To clear the air, yes, I'm the guy who pauses your databases. And I have no regrets. Welcome to the first Supabase conference. This is crazy for us. This is the first time we're doing something this big. So thank you all for coming. Thanks for everyone watching online. And thanks to YC for hosting us in this incredible space. So, yeah, round of applause for YC. So the Supabase tagline is build in a weekend, scale to millions. And today we're going to talk about both of these things. And we're going to start with our very own founding story. So Copple and I met in Singapore. We lived in a hacker house with 7 entrepreneurs. And people were building all kinds of crazy stuff. And most of us were building with Firebase. We love Firebase. You go to the website, you click a few buttons, you get a backend, and then you drop one line of JavaScript in your application, and you can start streaming data. But there was another database that we loved, and that's Postgres. 3 decades of development, fully open source, used at scale by pretty much every major enterprise on Earth. And so we thought, why don't we take all the cool bits of Firebase and put it on top of Postgres? And the more we thought about it, it was one of those things that seems like this should obviously exist in the world already. And it didn't, so we went and we built it. But we had one big problem. We didn't have any users outside of the people who lived in our apartment. And so here's the story of the first real Supabase user. YC companies are famous for being great early adopters. But there wasn't a ton of YC companies in Southeast Asia at the time. But there was one. Zendit. Think Stripe for Southeast Asia. Actually, if you speak to Patrick later from Stripe, he'll probably tell you that Stripe is the Stripe of Southeast Asia. But we'll leave that up to those guys to discuss. And Copple happened to know a couple of the guys from Zendit. And so we went to the Zendit office to do a Copplestone install. So Copplestone install, named after the Copplestone brothers from Stripe, is when you drive to the office of the people you want to sell to, and you manually write the integration code for them. And so we drove to the Zendit office, and we get there and we say, we want you guys to use Supabase as your main transactional database. And they politely said no. But they did have a new project that they were planning to build. There's a list of known money launderers that they needed in a database. And when a new customer comes in for them, they want to compare against this list of known money launderers to know whether they should ban the account or not. And so Copple went away, and he spent the next 2 days building this application. I think people now call this the forward-deployed engineer. And so the next step for us was to apply for YC. And Jared, our YC partner, called us up. And his first question was, guys, have you got any users? As a matter of fact, Jared, we do. So Jared invites us for an interview, and we do a remote Zoom interview from Singapore to SF. And apparently, we heard this story years later. What happened was they would ask us a question, and then there would be a huge lag and an outage, and they would miss the entire answer. And Jared was in the room like, no, these guys are great. Trust me, these guys are great. And so thanks to Jared, he got us into the batch. But we would do the whole batch remotely from Singapore because of COVID. So it was summer 2020, and we were in a strict lockdown in Singapore at the time. And we could only leave the apartment to do groceries, and the rest of the time in the flat. But it was really great for starting a company because we would wake up at 9, build all day, the YC batch would start at midnight Singapore time. We'd do YC midnight until 3 a.m., and then we'd wake up the next day and do it all again. And we got so much done in this first 3-month period. I think the kids are now calling it 996. And so after a couple of weeks of this, we had more users. But our website at the time looked like this. It's the original Supabase website designed by Copplestone. And our tagline was real-time Postgres. But people didn't really know what that meant. And on a whim, one day, we said, let's call it the open source Firebase alternative. And then everything changed. It became clear to people what we were trying to do. And it got picked up on Hacker News. And it went crazy. We went from 80 to 800 databases in pretty much one day. And then that's when things really started moving for us. And over the next 4 years, between 2020 and 2024, we'd go to 1 million developers on the platform. Over 1,000 YC companies now building with Supabase. And the community grew and grew. In fact, this year we did a round of community meetups. And there were Supabase events in 130 cities around the world, which is crazy for us. But then at the end of last year, something even more crazy happened.
I'm Eric Simons. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Bolt.do.
My name is Anton. I'm building Lovable. Jared Palmer. I'm the creator of V0. When we were deciding on how to build backend functionality for our users, what we saw is that many of them absolutely love the Supabase. Almost half of all Y Combinator startups, they build on top of Supabase.
V0 integrates with Supabase pretty seamlessly. If you ask V0 to generate some sort of application and it needs Supabase, you'll be prompted to generate in the application.
It's the best product in the world for building authentication and actually storing and retrieving data,
So we started getting integrated into these AI developer platforms. Lovable Cloud, V0, Bolt V2, and now Figma Make, who are going to be in the other building. So if you want to see Figma and the Make product, definitely go and speak to those guys. And this has led to an additional 3.5 million developers building with Supabase this year. And so that brings us to today. We're lucky enough to hear the stories of these amazing people. We have Patrick from Stripe, Dylan from Figma, James from Firebase is going to be here, who's been a huge inspiration for Supabase and a fan of ours since the start. We'll have a great conversation with James later. And so I've talked about our build in a weekend story, and now I'm going to invite Copple to the stage to talk about how we scale to millions and what's next for Supabase. Thank you.
Thanks, Ant. Is this working? Can you hear me? Yep, great. Okay, so today I want to focus on Supabase, where we've come from and where we're going. Since we started Supabase, our goal has been to create the platform that's both simple and scalable. This year, we've grown the platform to meet the demands of some of our largest customers. We've expanded the possibility of Postgres, adding modules like cron jobs and queues for handling background workers. We made it really simple to get started by releasing a UI library backed by Shadcn. We've pioneered the use of AI to make, build, and query your database, especially for those who don't know how to use SQL or are just learning. And we've introduced declarative schemas, so your database structure is always stored in code, defined in code, and synced automatically using Git. But the Supabase philosophy is less about features, and it's more about standards and ecosystems. Today, we're releasing support for 2 new standards for 2 new ecosystems. First is Web3. Some of the world's largest Web3 businesses run on Supabase, using our platform as a bridge between applications and blockchains. Today, we're making it even more seamless by releasing Sign-in with Web3. So you can now use Supabase Auth to sign in with either Solana or Ethereum. This has been one of our most demanded features. It was developed in collaboration with the Solana Foundation and a member of our Supabase community. Maintaining our focus on standards, it's implemented using the open standard EIP 4361. Let's shift our focus to the AI ecosystem. This year, Supabase has become incredibly popular with AI builders like Lovable, V0, Figma, and Bolt.new, as well as local tools like Cursor and Claude Code. One of the emerging protocols for this wave is MCP. And today, we're releasing support for the remote MCP server for Supabase. Remote MCP for development and branching opens our platform up to new tools, including ChatGPT, which just last month added MCP support for developers. We want to keep security top of mind, so we're encouraging everyone to use MCP for all of their development needs, and especially in branching. To facilitate this, we're also adding MCP to the local Supabase stack, so you get a fully sandboxed development environment. We have a lot more to say about MCP and the new features and security recommendations. So if you want to hear more, go to Greg's talk later on this afternoon at the build stage. So now let's look a bit to the future and what we're going to do in the Postgres ecosystem. Since this is our first conference, I want to spend some time talking about where we're going. Postgres is already the heart of everything we do. It's really powerful, it's reliable, it's the most loved, and actually the most popular database in the world. But as good as Postgres is, any database can be better. After 5 years of running over 9 million databases, we've become intimately familiar with some of the scaling challenges that you can face running Postgres. We've run into challenges with storage, with the Postgres engine itself, and with orchestration. Let's look at how Supabase will solve these challenges, starting with storage. 3 years ago, we started funding a Postgres extension called Oriole. Oriole is developed by a Postgres core contributor called Alexander Korotkov. The goal of Oriole is quite ambitious. It's to solve some of the wicked problems of Postgres storage. To name a few of them, the features, Oriole adds indexed organized tables. It doesn't require vacuum, which I'm sure many of you operating Postgres at scale are pretty familiar with some of the challenges of vacuum. It solves the infamous wraparound problem of Postgres for large tables. And finally, it adds pluggable storage so that anyone in the world can add alternative storage engines to Postgres, not just the ones that we want for our platform. And the results speak for themselves. Oriole benchmarks are up to 5.5 times faster than the default storage engine for Postgres. So at this point, you're probably thinking, Copple, that all sounds great, so what's the catch? The catch is that pluggable storage has actually been attempted a few times in the Postgres ecosystem. And it didn't work because, quite frankly, it's a lot of work. And more work than most companies are willing to commit to. But luckily, Supabase is not most companies. Oriole started as an open source project, And the goal has been to upstream everything that is developed to the Postgres core. But there's one small fly in the ointment, and that is that the Oriole technology was backed by a patent. And so we acquired Oriole, and for the past 1.5 years, we've been working to acquire that patent. And I'm proud to announce that just last month, we finalized the process, and we're making the patent freely available to the open source community. That's not all for Oriole and Postgres. An additional goal of Oriole is to use S3 as a first-class citizen for tiered storage. This allows you to split your storage between Postgres and S3. Oriole enables Postgres to store and retrieve that data, especially if it's less frequently used. And this got us thinking a lot about the future of the Supabase platform. As you all know, Postgres isn't a one-trick pony. It can also be used for vectors and embeddings. In 2023, Supabase was one of the first to champion Postgres as a vector database, using pgvector. And 2 years later, Supabase users are storing petabytes of embeddings across the platform. But AI is eating the world, and as AI becomes cheaper, generating, storing, and using those embeddings needs to become cheaper too. This year, we'll be introducing vector buckets for bottomless embeddings. Users will be able to start with pgvector and then move less frequently used embeddings directly into S3. But developers on Supabase shouldn't have to think about different storage platforms. For Supabase developers, we always want everything to feel like it's just Postgres. So later this year, we're going to release Supabase ETL, an open source Rust server that can stream Postgres data directly into S3. And we're not stopping at vectors. Some of our largest customers have huge data warehouses. These customers often ask me, what's the best way to use these data warehouses with Supabase? For a long time, I actually didn't really know the answer to this question. We didn't feel that Postgres is up for the job. It's not really designed as a data warehouse. However, something changed within the ecosystem in the past year. A new standard emerged called Iceberg. This is an open format that allows companies to store their data in a standard format, and then they can query it using any popular database or anything that supports Iceberg. Popular databases like ClickHouse or DuckDB, for example. To support this emerging format, 2 months ago, we added analytics buckets to Supabase storage. But we weren't 100% satisfied with the implementation because Postgres doesn't have support for Iceberg. So we asked ourselves, if companies are storing their warehouse data with Supabase, how can we make it accessible within Postgres? And fortunately, Postgres has a native feature called a foreign data wrapper. You can use the foreign data wrappers to query external data sources like native Postgres tables. They can map your other Postgres databases directly into your own, and you can write SQL like it's running locally. And for 2 years, we've been building a Rust library that extends this feature and makes it more robust. And just this week, we added read and write support for Iceberg inside Postgres. OK, so scaling Postgres storage is one thing, but operating it really is another thing. A world-class Postgres platform also needs to solve more than just storage. We also need to think about connection pooling for serverless workloads, HA and automated failover, zero downtime migrations and upgrades, observability and self-healing, and growing to petabyte scale using sharding. To solve these problems, we started our most ambitious project yet, Multigress. If you're familiar with Vitess for MySQL, you can think of Multigress like Vitess for Postgres. Multigress will scale indefinitely using Kubernetes and cloud-native tooling. This project will be no walk in the park. So how do we know that we are going to be able to pull it off? To do that, and to lead Multigress, we brought on Sugu, the co-creator of Vitess. Sugu's joining with an exceptional group of people, including Vitess maintainers and Postgres engineers who have run sharded Postgres at massive scale at companies like Figma. And the best thing is, Multigress will be 100% open source. Just after this talk, Sugu's going to be talking about how we're building Multigress and the progress so far, so make sure you stick around and hear what he has to say. So let's assess the opportunities we see with Postgres one more time. For storage, we're leveraging S3. We're investing in state-of-the-art Postgres engine with Oriole. We're creating ETL tools to replicate Postgres data into S3 buckets. And we've spent years developing foreign data wrappers to read and write data to S3. And for orchestration, we're building Multigress, a cloud-native orchestration engine for Postgres. The future of Postgres is more than a database, it's an operating system. But this is no small task. To do this, we're going to need to build one of the world's most talented teams. That's why today, we're announcing the Supabase Series E. We're raising over $100 million at a $5 billion valuation. That brings our total funding to about $500 million. So how will we use these funds? First, we're committed to the future of Postgres, as I've explained so far in this talk. The second thing is we're committed to our community, you, the users and developers. We're committing to our free plan. This round will be led by Excel and Peak and all of our insiders. And joining this round are our friends at Figma, who have been incredible partners to Supabase this year. But that's not really the most important thing to announce today. Normally, fundraising rounds are reserved for big investors and insiders, but Supabase was never really built that way. It was built by you, the community, and the open source developers who have helped us for the past 5.5 years. We care about open source, and we really, really care about our community. And so we're reserving $1 million of this round for the community. There's one caveat. It's only open for developers who have committed to open source the Supabase or the Postgres ecosystem before today. So there might be no guarantees. There might be something in the next 12 months. So if you want to get involved in the open source ecosystem, then it's a good nudge. Ant and I have actually talked about this for many years, so this makes me personally very proud that we can actually pull this off, and we're in a position to make this happen. Okay, I'm excited to have you all here today and tuning in online from around the world. We have a bunch more exciting content from the Supabase team and some legendary speakers. Up next, we'll have Sugu here on stage to talk about Multigress, and I'll join him at the end for a bit of a Q&A, so stick around. I had one request for the Supabase team, and that was to make this less like a conference and more like a festival. And so at, I think, around 5:30 or 6 p.m., we'll be having an after party here where I'll be mingling and the team will be mingling, and we'll be hanging out. I think there's DJs and everything there. So make sure you stick around all day. It's a beautiful day here, and hopefully the weather continues. So make sure you mingle. We were really curated with this crowd. We only wanted people who were builders, open source contributors. And so if you turn to the people around you, much like our meetups, we wanted you to be able to chat to other builders, learn from them, and just generally get connected with others in the startup ecosystem. So yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting you all, and thank you all for coming.